My name is Rachel Parker, and I'm 24 years old. 30 seconds ago, my sister's groom asked a question that destroyed the wedding. The ballroom was silent. More than 200 guests were staring at my sister. My parents looked terrified. Behind me, a giant screen displayed bank records, payment receipts, and transfers nobody was ever supposed to see. Then the groom asked again. Did you know? My sister's hands trembled. Tears filled her eyes. She looked at our parents. Then at me. Then back at the crowd. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Finally, she whispered one word. Yes. The room exploded. Gasps. Arguments. Guests jumping from their seats. Family members shouting. The wedding my parents had spent months bragging about was falling apart right in front of everyone. And somehow, I was standing there holding the microphone. But here's the thing. 5 years ago, all I wanted was to go to college. I wasn't trying to destroy a wedding. I wasn't trying to expose my family. I was just trying to chase a dream. Before I tell you how my mother sold my dream for my sister's wedding, welcome to her revenge stories. If this story resonates with you, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. I grew up in a small town in Ohio with my parents and my younger sister, Chloe. For a long time, I thought we were a normal family. Not perfect. Just normal. It wasn't until I got older that I realized something was very different about the way my parents saw the two of us. From the day we started school, Chloe and I couldn't have been more different. I loved learning. I loved solving problems. I loved figuring things out. Math felt like a puzzle. Science felt like an adventure. While other kids rushed outside during lunch, I was usually in the library reading books about medicine, engineering, or space exploration. My teachers noticed. By middle school, they were already telling my parents I had a bright future. Every report card was filled with A's. Every semester brought another certificate. Another award. Another achievement. And every time, I secretly hoped this would be the one that finally made my parents proud. But somehow, it never happened. Meanwhile, Chloe struggled with almost everything in school. Homework frustrated her. Tests made her nervous. If she received a bad grade, she would cry. If she forgot an assignment, it became a family emergency. My parents immediately rushed to comfort her. My mother would sit beside her for hours. My father would tell her she was special. That she was trying her best. That grades weren't everything. And honestly, there was nothing wrong with that. At first. The problem was what happened when I succeeded. Because when I brought home good grades, there was no celebration. No excitement. No special attention. Just expectations. I still remember bringing home my first straight A report card. I was 10 years old. I practically ran through the front door. Mom. Dad. Look. My father glanced at it and smiled. Good job, Rachel. Then he returned to helping Chloe with a school project. That was it. No conversation. No questions. No excitement. Just good job. Meanwhile, Chloe received applause for passing a class she had nearly failed. As the years passed, the difference became impossible to ignore. One afternoon, I won first place in a regional science competition. I had spent months preparing. Months. I still remember standing on that stage holding the trophy. Feeling proud. Feeling hopeful. Feeling like maybe this achievement would finally matter. When I got home, Chloe was crying because she hadn't been selected for a dance performance at school. The entire evening became about her disappointment. My parents ordered her favorite takeout. Watched movies with her. comforted her. My trophy sat untouched on the kitchen counter. Nobody asked about the competition. Nobody asked how I felt. Late that night, I quietly carried the trophy to my room. Alone. That became a pattern. Every time Chloe struggled, the family stopped. Every time I succeeded, life simply continued. And then something happened that I never forgot. I was 15. Chloe was 13. Christmas morning. I needed a new laptop for advanced science classes. The old one constantly froze. Sometimes it shut down completely. I had mentioned it for months. When Christmas arrived, Chloe opened a brand new laptop. The exact model I had been researching. I remember staring at the box. Certain there had been some mistake. There wasn't. My gift was a notebook and a set of pens. When I finally asked about the laptop, my father smiled and said something that would follow me for years. "You're smart enough to make the old one work." At the time, I nodded. But inside, something hurt. Because that sentence perfectly described my place in the family. Whenever Chloe needed help, people rushed to save her. Whenever I needed help, people assumed I'd find a way. And slowly, I began realizing something painful. Being capable had become my biggest disadvantage. Because the stronger I appeared, the easier it became for everyone to overlook me. As I got older, the favoritism became harder to ignore. When I was younger, I used to make excuses for my parents. I told myself they were busy. I told myself Chloe simply needed more attention. I told myself one day things would balance out. They never did. If anything, the gap only grew wider. By the time I reached high school, I had stopped expecting praise. But deep down, there was still a small part of me that hoped. A part that wanted my parents to look at me the way they looked at Chloe. A part that wanted to feel chosen. I remember one particular spring afternoon. I was 16. For months, I had been preparing for the state science championship. While my friends were hanging out after school, I was studying. While everyone else slept, I was researching. I poured everything into that competition. The day of the event, hundreds of students from across the state filled the auditorium. Some came from elite schools with expensive programs and private tutors. I was terrified. My hands were shaking when I presented my project. But when the results were announced, I heard my name. First place. For a moment, I couldn't believe it. The audience applauded. Teachers congratulated me. The judges shook my hand. One of them even told me I had a bright future in engineering. I drove home feeling happier than I had felt in years. I walked through the front door carrying the trophy. "Mom. Dad. I won." My mother glanced at it. "That's wonderful, Rachel." Before she could say another word, Chloe stormed into the kitchen. She had just learned she wasn't selected for a school leadership program. She was crying. Within seconds, everyone's attention shifted. My father wrapped an arm around her. My mother sat beside her. They spent the entire evening comforting her. Ordering her favorite food. Watching movies with her. Telling her she was special. My trophy remained on the kitchen counter. Nobody asked about the competition. Nobody asked how I won. Nobody asked how I felt. Late that night, I carried it to my bedroom. Alone. I placed it on a shelf beside my other awards. Then I cried quietly so nobody would hear me. A year later, something similar happened. I earned a prestigious academic scholarship. The award covered a large portion of college tuition. My guidance counselor called it life-changing. I was so excited that I rushed home before dinner to tell my parents. My father looked up from his newspaper. "That's wonderful." My mother smiled. Then Chloe walked into the room complaining about an argument she had with one of her friends. Immediately, the conversation changed. For the next hour, they discussed Chloe's problem. Nobody mentioned my scholarship again. Not once. I sat there staring at my plate. Listening. Waiting. Hoping. Nothing came. The following Christmas hurt even more. By then, my laptop was barely functioning. It froze constantly. Sometimes it shut down while I was working on school projects. I had mentioned it for nearly a year. My parents always said they would look into it. Christmas morning finally arrived. The living room was packed with gifts. Chloe excitedly opened a large box. Inside was the newest laptop on the market. The exact model I had been researching. My heart sank. I kept waiting. Certain there had to be another one somewhere. There wasn't. My gift was a notebook, a set of pens, and a small gift card. When I finally asked about the laptop, my father looked genuinely confused. Then he smiled. "Rachel, you're smart enough to make your old one work." Everyone laughed lightly. As if it were a compliment. I forced a smile too. But inside, something broke. Because I finally understood the truth. Every achievement I earned became a reason to give me less. Every success made people assume I needed nothing. Every sacrifice went unnoticed. And every time Chloe struggled, the entire family rushed to save her. That was the moment I stopped asking myself why Chloe was treated differently. The real question was why nobody seemed to notice how much it hurt. By the time I turned 16, I had already figured out what I wanted to do with my life. While most of my classmates kept changing their minds about careers every few months, I couldn't stop thinking about one thing. Biomedical engineering. The first time I learned about it was during a science fair. A guest speaker talked about artificial limbs, medical devices, and technology that helped save lives. I was fascinated. The idea that someone could use science and engineering to help people walk again, breathe again, or survive illnesses they once couldn't survive completely captured me. That night, I stayed awake until almost 2 in the morning reading articles online. The next day I read more. Then more. Soon it became an obsession. I wasn't dreaming about becoming famous. I wasn't dreaming about becoming rich. I wanted to build things that mattered. Things that could change lives. For years, that dream became my motivation. Whenever school became difficult, I reminded myself why I was doing it. Whenever I felt overlooked, I reminded myself where I was going. I researched colleges. Compared programs. Read admission requirements. Printed brochures. I even kept a folder hidden beneath my bed filled with information about universities across the country. Some nights I would sit on my bedroom floor looking through those papers and imagining my future. A future that felt so close I could almost touch it. Then one evening, everything changed. I was 17. We were having dinner. Nothing special. Just meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and one of Chloe's endless stories about school drama. When there was finally a quiet moment, I decided to tell my parents. "I know what I want to study." My father looked up. "What is it?" "Biomedical engineering." For a second, I actually felt excited. I thought they might be proud. I thought they might ask questions. Instead, my parents exchanged a look. A look I didn't understand. My stomach immediately tightened. My mother set down her fork. Then she sighed. "Rachel, there may not be enough money for both of you to go to college." The room suddenly felt smaller. I looked from my mother to my father. "What do you mean?" My father rubbed his forehead. "If we ever have to choose, Chloe would probably need more support." I stared at him. Certain I had misunderstood. You'd choose Chloe over me. Nobody answered immediately. That silence hurt more than any words could have. Finally, my father spoke. Rachel, you're smart. You always figure things out. You'll survive. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. Chloe sat quietly at the table. Nobody objected. Nobody said it was unfair. The conversation simply moved on as if my future had just become a minor inconvenience. That night I cried harder than I ever had before. Not because I couldn't go to college, but because I realized my dream mattered less than Chloe's comfort. The next morning, I made a decision. If nobody was going to help me build my future, I would build it myself. A few weeks later, I got a job at a small neighborhood pharmacy. It wasn't glamorous. Most days involved stocking shelves, organizing inventory, cleaning counters, and helping customers find products. After school, I went straight there. Weekends, holidays, summer breaks. While my friends went to parties, I worked. While Chloe spent evenings hanging out with friends or watching television, I worked. The pay wasn't amazing, but every dollar meant something. Every paycheck felt like progress. Eventually, I asked my parents to open a separate savings account specifically for college. To my surprise, they agreed. The account was opened. And from that day forward, every paycheck went into it. Month after month. Year after year. I watched the balance slowly grow. A few $100s became a few thousand. Then more. Whenever life became difficult, I would log into the account and look at the number. That account became more than money. It became proof that my dream was still alive. Proof that I wasn't giving up. For 5 years, I sacrificed things most people my age never had to sacrifice. Vacations. New clothes. Concerts. Parties. Dating. Sometimes I felt exhausted. Sometimes I felt lonely. But every deposit reminded me why I was doing it. Because one day, I was going to walk onto a college campus. One day, I was going to become a biomedical engineer. And nobody, not even my own family, was going to stop me. At least, that's what I believed back then. The years passed faster than I expected. Graduation came and went. Most of my classmates packed their bags, moved into dorms, and started the next chapter of their lives. I didn't. While they posted photos from college campuses and orientation events, I woke up before sunrise and went to work. At first, I told myself it was temporary. Just 1 year. Maybe 2. Long enough to save enough money for my dream. Then I would finally enroll in the biomedical engineering program I had spent years working toward. So I kept going. The pharmacy job became a full-time position. The shelves changed. Managers came and went. New employees arrived. Life moved forward. And every paycheck went into the same college account. Whenever I felt discouraged, I checked the balance. Watching it grow gave me hope. It reminded me that every sacrifice had a purpose. Then Chloe graduated high school. And suddenly, everything changed. The same parents who spent years talking about financial struggles somehow found money. A lot of money. Chloe was accepted into a university several states away to study theater arts. I still remember the celebration dinner. My mother cried happy tears. My father proudly announced the news to relatives. Everyone acted as if Chloe had just been accepted into the most prestigious program in the country. I sat there quietly watching. Part of me was happy for her. But another part couldn't stop wondering something. Where had all this money come from? A few weeks later, I got my answer. Or at least part of it. My parents paid Chloe's tuition. Every penny. No loans. No delays. No discussions about finances. The tuition was covered immediately. Then came the apartment. Not a small apartment. Not a basic student apartment. A beautiful one-bedroom apartment near campus. Modern kitchen. New appliances. Safe neighborhood. Close to everything. Then came the furniture. A brand new bed. A sofa. A television. Kitchen equipment. Decorations. Even expensive curtains. I helped load some of it into a moving truck. Every item felt like another reminder of what my parents had told me years earlier. There may not be enough money. Apparently there was. Just not for me. As months passed, the spending continued. Whenever Chloe needed something, money appeared. Rent. Books. Food. Travel expenses. Entertainment. My parents covered it all. Meanwhile, I continued working. Saving. Waiting. Hoping. Trying to understand. One night, after Chloe had returned home for a holiday break, I finally reached my limit. My father was sitting alone on the back porch. The summer air was warm. Crickets chirped in the distance. The neighborhood was quiet. I sat down beside him. For a few moments neither of us spoke. Then I asked the question that had been living inside me for years. Dad? He looked over. Yeah. I swallowed hard. Why was Chloe always more important? The words hung between us. For the first time in my life, I didn't look away. I needed an answer. A real one. My father stared out into the darkness. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he sighed. And what happened next somehow hurt more than I expected. Because he wasn't angry. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't even trying to be cruel. He sounded honest. Rachel, he said quietly, because I never worried about you. I frowned. What does that mean? He looked at me. You always figured things out. You handled problems. You worked hard. You never needed rescuing. I felt my chest tighten. He continued. Chloe was different. She needed more help. More support. Then came the sentence that stayed with me for years. The sentence I would hear in my head long after that conversation ended. I always knew you'd survive. That was it. No apology. No regret. Just the truth. I sat there staring at him. Unable to speak. Because in that moment, I finally understood something. My parents hadn't ignored my dreams because they thought I would fail. They ignored them because they thought I would succeed anyway. And somehow, that realization hurt even more. Because being strong had never felt so lonely. 5 years. That was how long I had waited. 5 years of working. 5 years of saving. 5 years of watching everyone else move forward while I stood still. And finally, it felt like my turn. I still remember the email. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while I was stocking shelves at the pharmacy. The notification appeared on my phone. For a second, I just stared at it. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the box I was carrying. I opened the email. Read the first line. Then read it again. And again. Congratulations. I had been accepted. Accepted into one of the biomedical engineering programs I had dreamed about for years. For a moment, the entire world disappeared. The pharmacy. The customers. The noise. Everything. I rushed into the break room and cried. Not sad tears. Happy tears. The kind that come after carrying a dream for so long that you almost stop believing it will happen. All I could think was, I did it. I actually did it. That evening, I couldn't stop smiling. I drove home with the acceptance letter printed and folded carefully in my bag. For the first time in years, I felt hopeful. Because I knew I wasn't starting from zero. I had my college fund. 5 years of savings. 5 years of sacrifice. Everything was finally coming together. That night, during dinner, I made the announcement. I got in. Everyone looked up. My mother blinked. My father set down his fork. Chloe glanced away from her phone. I got accepted into the biomedical engineering program. I was waiting for excitement. A congratulations. A hug. Something. Anything. Instead, the room became strangely quiet. The reaction felt wrong. My father's smile looked forced. My mother suddenly became very interested in her food. Even Chloe avoided eye contact. The happiness I had carried home slowly began slipping away. Something wasn't right. A few hours later, my parents asked me to come into the living room. The moment I saw their faces, my stomach dropped. My mother looked nervous. My father couldn't meet my eyes. Rachel, my mother began softly. We need to tell you something. I sat down. The room felt cold. What is it? My father sighed heavily. Then he delivered the sentence that shattered everything. The money is gone. I stared at him. What money? Neither of them answered immediately. Then my mother whispered. Your college fund. For a second, I genuinely thought she was joking. I almost laughed. Then I realized she wasn't. What do you mean it's gone? My father cleared his throat. We had a family debt. We had to take care of it. The words felt unreal. Family debt. What debt? When? How? Questions exploded inside my head. But none of the answers made sense. 5 years. 5 years of working after school. 5 years of holidays spent behind a cash register. 5 years of believing every dollar was bringing me closer to my future. Gone. Just like that. I barely slept that night. And somehow things got worse. A few months later, Chloe announced her engagement. She had met an up-and-coming actor during college. Someone who was starting to gain attention in local theater productions and independent films. My parents were thrilled. Absolutely thrilled. You would have thought royalty had entered the family. Suddenly the entire house revolved around wedding planning. The wedding became the talk of the town. Every conversation centered on venues. Guest lists. Flowers. Photographers. Entertainment. Catering. Social media announcements. Everything. And somehow, I became the unpaid event coordinator. Every day brought another responsibility. Another task. Another demand. Rachel, pick up the invitations. Rachel, meet the decorator. Rachel, call the florist. Rachel, organize the seating chart. Rachel, confirm the catering schedule. Rachel, drive across town and deliver these documents. Rachel, help choose centerpieces. Rachel, fix this problem. Rachel, handle that issue. I was doing work that professional wedding planners were paid thousands of dollars to do. Yet nobody thanked me. Nobody appreciated me. Nobody even noticed. The strangest part was the money. It seemed endless. Every week there was another payment. Another deposit. Another expensive decision. A larger venue. Better decorations. Premium catering. Luxury transportation. Money flowed constantly. And every time I saw another invoice being paid, the same question returned. If my parents truly had no money for my education, where was all of this coming from? At the time, I didn't know the answer. But deep down, something felt wrong. And the closer the wedding got, the harder it became to ignore. If there was one thing I learned from years of being overlooked, it was this. People stop paying attention to you when they think you're harmless. My family had spent years assuming I wouldn't ask questions, wouldn't push back, wouldn't challenge anything. And because of that, they became careless. The first crack appeared about 6 weeks before the wedding. I had spent most of the afternoon driving across town collecting paperwork for one of the vendors. By the time I got home, I was exhausted. The house was unusually quiet. My father was still at work. Chloe was out with friends. I was heading upstairs when I heard my mother's voice coming from the kitchen. She was on the phone. At first, I wasn't listening. Then I heard my name. I stopped. Not intentionally. Just instinctively. And then I heard the sentence that changed everything. "We'll transfer the rest from Rachel's account tomorrow." My heart skipped. My account? What about the venue deposit? The person on the other end asked. My mother laughed softly. "The venue has to be paid by Friday. We'll use the remainder from Rachel's account and finish it." I froze. Completely froze. For a second, I honestly thought I had misunderstood. Maybe there was another account. Maybe she meant something else. Maybe I was being paranoid. But deep down, I already knew. My stomach felt sick. I quietly backed away before she could see me. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the conversation over and over. The words wouldn't leave my head. Rachel's account. Venue deposit. Tomorrow. The next morning, I tried convincing myself I was wrong. I wanted to be wrong. Because the alternative was something I wasn't ready to face. Days passed. Then something happened that removed every remaining doubt. I had been helping organize wedding invitations in the dining room when I realized I had forgotten my phone upstairs. As I walked past the kitchen, I heard voices. My mother's. And Chloe's. Neither of them knew I was there. I stopped when I heard my name. Again. What if Rachel finds out? Chloe asked. The room fell silent for a moment. Then my mother replied. She won't. I felt my pulse quicken. My fingers tightened around the staircase railing. Chloe spoke again. She worked for that money. For one brief moment, hope appeared. Maybe she was finally going to stop this. Maybe she felt guilty. Maybe she was about to tell our mother they couldn't do this. I stood there waiting. Holding my breath. Then Chloe sighed. And said the words that hurt more than anything else. I just don't want her ruining the wedding. My chest felt hollow. Not because of the money. Not even because of the lie. Because Chloe knew. She knew exactly where the money came from. She knew what I had sacrificed. She knew how many evenings I had spent working while everyone else was living their lives. She knew how many birthdays, holidays, weekends, and opportunities one had given up. And she accepted it anyway. The little sister I had defended my entire life. The little sister I had helped with homework. Driven to school. Protected from bullies. Supported through every crisis. She knew. And she chose herself. I quietly walked away before they could see me. Then I sat in my car for nearly an hour. Just staring through the windshield. Trying not to cry. Trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. But eventually the sadness became something else. Questions. Questions needed answers. And answers required proof. So I started digging. Carefully. Quietly. Methodically. I began collecting everything. Bank statements. Transfer records. Invoices. Payment confirmations. Vendor receipts. Email exchanges. Text messages. Screenshots. Dates. Amounts. Names. Every night after work, I sat at my laptop organizing evidence. The deeper I looked, the worse it became. The so-called family debt never existed. There had never been a financial emergency. No crisis. No unavoidable expense. Just lies. Years of lies. My college fund had become the wedding fund. The venue. The decorations. The catering. The photography. The deposits. The entertainment. Piece by piece, my future had been converted into Chloe's perfect day. By the end of my investigation, there was no doubt left. I finally had the truth. And unlike my family, I had something else too. Proof. The wedding was only a few weeks away. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being kept in the dark. They were. The wedding day arrived faster than I expected. After everything I had discovered, part of me didn't think I would actually show up. But I did. Not because I wanted to celebrate. And not because I wanted revenge. At least that's what I kept telling myself. The truth was, I needed to see this through. I needed answers. I needed closure. The venue was even more extravagant than I had imagined. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Fresh flowers lined the entrance. Luxury cars filled the parking lot. Everywhere I looked, people were admiring the decorations. The decorations I had helped arrange. The decorations paid for with money that should have funded my future. Guests smiled as they entered. Servers carried trays through the crowd. Music floated through the ballroom. Everyone kept talking about how beautiful everything looked. I couldn't stop thinking about what it had cost. When I walked inside, my mother barely acknowledged me. She was too busy greeting important guests. My father was standing near the entrance with Chloe and her fiancé. The moment he saw me, he waved me over. For a second, I thought maybe today would be different. Maybe he wanted to introduce me properly. Maybe he wanted to act like a father. Instead, he wrapped an arm around Chloe and smiled proudly. "This is Chloe," he told a group of guests. "Our future star." Everyone applauded. Then he looked at me. "And this is Rachel." He laughed lightly. "Our daughter who still hasn't figured things out." The guests chuckled. A few people exchanged awkward looks. My face burned. I forced a smile. The same smile I had been forcing my entire life. As the ceremony continued, the comments didn't stop. Relatives approached me. Some asked if I was still working at the pharmacy. Others asked whether I had ever gone back to school. One aunt patted my shoulder and said, "Don't worry, sweetheart. Success comes at different times for different people." I wanted to tell her I had already earned my future. Someone else had simply stolen it. Then came Chloe. She looked stunning in her wedding dress. The room practically worshipped her. At one point during photos, she glanced at me and laughed. "You know, Rachel, maybe you'll finally make it to college before my first movie premieres." Several bridesmaids laughed. A few cousins joined in. I laughed too. Or at least I pretended to. Inside, I felt nothing. The reception began shortly after. The ballroom filled with applause. Champagne glasses clinked. Guests settled into their seats. Then the speeches started. My father stood first. He talked about sacrifice. About family. About everything parents do to support their children. People nodded. Some even wiped tears from their eyes. Then my mother spoke. She described Chloe as a dreamer who never gave up. A daughter who deserved every opportunity she received. The crowd applauded again. Finally, Chloe took the microphone. She smiled at her new husband. Then at our parents. I wouldn't be standing here today without the incredible sacrifices Mom and Dad made for me. The applause grew even louder. People stood. Cheered. Celebrated. And that's when I realized something. If I stayed silent now, I would spend the rest of my life regretting it. My hands were shaking as I stood. The room slowly quieted. I walked toward the stage. Toward Chloe. Toward my parents. Toward the giant projection screen hanging behind them. Nobody knew what I was about to do. Not yet. I took the microphone. The ballroom became silent. Every eye followed me. I looked at my parents. Then at Chloe. Then at the guests. And finally I spoke. Since we're talking about sacrifices. The room grew even quieter. I think everyone deserves to know the truth. My mother's face immediately changed. My father's smile vanished. Chloe stopped breathing for a second. Rachel, my father said quickly. Now isn't the time. I ignored him. For years I had been ignored. Now it was my turn to speak. I spent 5 years working after school, weekends, holidays, and every free moment I had saving money for college. Confused whispers began spreading across the room. My parents told me that money was gone. I paused. They said it was used to settle a family debt. The ballroom remained silent. Then I looked directly at my mother. There was no debt. Gasps echoed across the room. My father stepped forward. Rachel, stop. But I continued. A few weeks ago, I discovered where the money really went. My mother looked pale. Chloe stared at the floor. The crowd was completely silent. Then I nodded toward the projector booth. The screen behind us suddenly came to life. Bank statements. Transfer records. Venue invoices. Payment confirmations. Messages. Receipts. Dates. Amounts. Names. Proof. Everything. The ballroom erupted into shock. People stood from their chairs. Others covered their mouths. Someone dropped a glass. Another guest whispered, "Oh my God." Every piece of evidence pointed to the same truth. My college fund. 5 years of savings. 5 years of sacrifice. Had paid for the wedding everyone was celebrating. And for the first time all day. Nobody was looking at Chloe. They were looking at the truth. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The ballroom felt frozen in time. The giant screen continued displaying the evidence behind me. Bank transfers. Venue payments. Invoices. Receipts. Proof. Cold, undeniable proof. The guests stared at the screen. Then at my parents. Then at Chloe. Then back at the screen again. Nobody seemed to know what to say. Then I noticed Chloe's fiancé. He hadn't taken his eyes off the evidence. Not once. The color had drained from his face. Slowly, he turned toward Chloe. The room became so quiet I could hear someone breathing behind me. Chloe. His voice sounded different. Broken. Confused. Almost afraid. She looked at him but didn't answer. Then he asked the question. The same question that had been hanging over the entire room. Did you know? Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. Even the wedding staff had stopped working. Every eye in the ballroom shifted toward Chloe. She immediately started crying. The kind of crying that comes when someone knows there is no escape left. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Her hands shook. Still, she said nothing. The groom stepped closer. This time his voice was louder. Did you know where the money came from? Silence. The longest silence of my life. I looked at my sister. The same sister I had helped with homework. The same sister I defended when kids teased her in school. The same sister who knew exactly what that college fund meant to me. For a moment, I almost hoped she would deny it. Because the truth was going to destroy everything. Then Chloe lowered her head. And whispered. Yes. The room exploded. Gasps echoed from every direction. Someone shouted. She knew. Another guest stood up so quickly that his chair crashed to the floor. People began talking all at once. Arguments erupted across the ballroom. Whispers turned into outrage. The groom took several steps backward. As if he no longer recognized the woman standing in front of him. His eyes filled with disbelief. You knew that was Rachel's college fund? Chloe wiped tears from her face. It's not what you think. The words sounded weak even before they left her mouth. The groom laughed once. A short, painful laugh. Then he shook his head. Not what I think. His voice cracked. You knew they took her future. Chloe tried reaching for him. He pulled away. Immediately. Like he couldn't stand being touched. My mother rushed forward. We can explain this. My father followed. Everybody just needs to calm down. But nobody was listening anymore. Because there was nothing left to explain. The evidence was still glowing behind them. The truth was impossible to hide. Then the groom's parents stood up. His mother looked horrified. His father looked furious. They had spent months helping organize this wedding. Months believing they were joining an honest family. Now they looked completely embarrassed. His mother turned toward my parents. You stole from your own daughter. The question hit the room like thunder. Nobody answered. Because there was no answer. Guests began leaving their tables. One by one. Then groups. The celebration started unraveling right in front of everyone. The music stopped. The dancing stopped. The laughter disappeared. Conversations turned into accusations. Friends questioned friends. Relatives argued with relatives. The wedding planner looked completely overwhelmed. Everything my parents had spent months building was collapsing within minutes. The perfect wedding. The perfect family image. The perfect story they wanted everyone to believe. Gone. Years of lies had finally caught up with them. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one standing in the middle of the humiliation. They were. I didn't stay long enough to watch the rest of the wedding fall apart. There was nothing left to say. Nothing left to prove. As arguments erupted around the ballroom and guests continued leaving, I quietly placed the microphone on a nearby table. Then I picked up my purse. And walked away. Not smiling. Not celebrating. Just free. For the first time in years, I felt lighter. The strange thing is, I didn't feel victorious. I wasn't happy that Chloe was crying. I wasn't happy that my parents were embarrassed. I wasn't happy that a wedding had been ruined. What I felt was relief. Relief that I no longer had to carry the burden of their lies. Relief that the truth was finally out. Outside, the evening air felt cool against my face. I stood in the parking lot for several minutes looking at the stars. The sounds of shouting still echoed faintly from inside the venue. Then I got into my car and drove away. I never looked back. Months passed. Life slowly moved forward. The scandal spread quickly through town. People talked. Some supported me. Some thought I should have stayed quiet. Others blamed my parents entirely. But one thing was certain. Their reputation never fully recovered. For years they had carefully built an image of being devoted parents who sacrificed everything for their children. Now people knew the truth. My mother tried calling me countless times. My father left messages asking to talk. Sometimes they apologized. Sometimes they tried to justify their decisions. Sometimes they blamed circumstances. But nothing they said could change what had happened. The trust was gone. As for Chloe, she never forgave me. In her mind, I had ruined her wedding. She never seemed willing to admit that the truth had ruined it, not me. The last time we spoke, she told me I had destroyed the most important day of her life. Maybe she believed that. But deep down, I think she knew who was really responsible. Her relationship with her husband never recovered either. After learning the truth, he looked at her differently. Not with anger. Not even with hatred. Just disappointment. And sometimes disappointment is harder to repair than anger. Meanwhile, I finally did what I had dreamed about for years. I enrolled in college. Not because someone gave me an opportunity. Not because someone rescued me. But because I kept working. Kept saving. Kept believing in myself. The first day I walked across campus, carrying my backpack toward my biomedical engineering class, I stopped for a moment. Students hurried past me. Some looked nervous. Others looked excited. I smiled. Then I remembered something my father had told me years earlier. You'll survive. For a long time, I thought those words were a dismissal. Proof that I didn't matter. Proof that nobody cared. But standing there on that campus, I finally understood something. He was right. I did survive. Not because of them. But despite them. And as I walked toward class, I couldn't help but think. My parents spent years telling me I would never be anything. In the end, the only thing I ruined was the lie they built their family around. Now I'd love to hear from you. Do you think Rachel was right to expose the truth at the wedding? Or should she have handled it privately? And if you discovered your family had stolen your future to fund someone else's dream, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments below. If this story touched you in any way, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And be sure to check out our other stories. You never know which one might stay with you long after the video ends.